The family
Time has
sold her
come
for
to
being too
decide where we
plain,
stand.
but the rich rancher
There
saw
will
the
be
only
no
face he
middle
wanted.
ground in the days ahead.
The village was quiet, and everyone knew each other's business. From the moment Maria could remember, life had been a struggle for her family. Her father worked tirelessly in the fields from dawn until dusk, trying to grow enough crops to feed the family. Her mother spent her days cooking, cleaning, and taking care of Maria and her younger siblings. Money was always tight, and every day brought worries about food, repairs, and what the next season might bring. Despite the hardships, Maria had a gentle and kind spirit. She would spend hours helping her mother with the chores, fetching water from the well, sweeping the yard, and tending to the small vegetable garden. But what made Maria truly remarkable was her heart. She noticed small details that others overlooked. If a neighbor's child was hungry, she would sneak them an extra piece of bread. If someone fell ill, she would quietly bring water or medicine without being asked. People in the village began to notice her kindness, even if her family did not always appreciate it in the way she deserved. Maria was not considered beautiful by the standards of her family or the village. Her face was plain, her skin tanned from the sun, and her hair was simple and dark, without shine or curl. Her features were ordinary, and she had no striking traits that would make someone stop in their tracks. In a village where marriage and appearance were often valued above character, Maria's plainness became a constant topic of discussion. Her relatives, though they loved her in some ways, frequently remarked on how she lacked beauty. The whispers of the village and the opinions of her own family made her self-conscious. Yet, Maria never let these words break her spirit. She understood that beauty could fade, but character, strength, and kindness could last a lifetime. She worked hard in school, reading every book she could get her hands on, and learning as much as possible. She was curious about the world beyond the village, dreaming about the places she had only read about in old, tattered books. But even as she dreamed, she knew that her family's financial struggles might prevent her from pursuing education or opportunities that could take her far away from the small village. Her family's attitude toward her future was practical, not loving. Her parents often spoke about arranging a marriage for her, not based on love or compatibility, but on wealth and status. In their eyes, Maria's role was to help the family survive. They made it clear, subtly, and sometimes not so subtly, that her value as a daughter depended on her ability to secure money through marriage. Each conversation about potential suitors left Maria feeling small and invisible. The idea that her life could be determined by someone else's desire for her, rather than her own choices, was painful, but she kept her disappointment inside. The pressure grew as Maria entered her late teens. Relatives began asking her mother why she had not married Maria yet. Friends of the family offered suggestions, often bringing up wealthy men who might be willing to take her as a bride. Each suggestion felt like a reminder that Maria was only valuable if someone else saw her as desirable. The village had unspoken rules about marriage. Young women were expected to be beautiful, graceful, and charming. Those who did not fit the ideal often faced criticism, isolation, or worse, were dismissed entirely. Maria was painfully aware that she did not fit this mold. Despite the challenges, Maria found small joys that kept her heart alive. She loved helping the animals in the village, especially the horses that roamed freely on the hills. She had a way with them, calming even the most skittish creatures with a gentle touch and quiet voice. She also loved to read stories about distant lands, imagining herself traveling beyond the hills and rivers that defined her world. She dreamed of a life where her intelligence and kindness mattered more than her appearance, a life where she could make decisions about her own future. Maria's best friend, Sophia, often reminded her that she was more than her looks. Sophia was lively and outspoken, often teasing Maria about her quiet nature, but she always had words of encouragement. "One day, someone will see what I see in you," Sophia would say. Someone will love you for who you are, not just how you look. Maria would smile at these words, holding onto the hope even when the world around her seemed unkind. The tension at home grew when Maria's parents began to actively seek suitors. Meetings were arranged with men who came from nearby villages or even towns farther away. Maria sat through each introduction with quiet composure, listening politely, but her heart was never in it. The men often looked at her with polite curiosity but little real interest, whispering among themselves about her plain features. Maria could feel the weight of her family's expectations pressing down on her. She wanted to protest, to say that she was more than what they saw on the surface, but she had learned that arguing often led to harsher words and greater disappointment. As months passed, Maria's sense of powerlessness grew. She watched her younger siblings play freely, while she felt trapped by invisible chains. She understood that her parents were doing what they thought was best, but the knowledge offered little comfort. She longed for someone who could look beyond her plain appearance, someone who could appreciate her heart, her intelligence, and her resilience. The thought that such a person might exist somewhere far away kept her spirit alive, a small flame in a world that often tried to snuff it out. Even in the village, where gossip and judgment were constant, Maria's character began to shine. People noticed her honesty, her reliability, and the way she helped without expecting anything in return. Local shopkeepers trusted her to deliver goods or help with errands. Neighbors came to her for advice or comfort. Though her family saw her primarily as plain, the wider world around her began to recognize her value in ways that had nothing to do with appearance. Yet, the most painful moments were those when her family's judgment became clear. Her mother would sometimes sigh, commenting on Maria's lack of beauty as if it were a fault. Her father, exhausted from work, would occasionally mutter that a more attractive daughter might have brought the family fortune long ago. These words, though not meant to hurt, cut deeply. Maria often went to the hills alone, sitting under the shade of a large tree, watching the sun dip behind the mountains and letting her tears fall quietly. She would whisper to herself that she was more than her face, more than what others thought of her. The villagers, meanwhile, continued their quiet judgments. Invitations to festivals and gatherings sometimes excluded her, or she was paired with those who were equally overlooked by society. Maria learned to navigate this world with grace, never letting anger or bitterness show, though she felt both in quiet moments. She helped where she could, smiled when necessary, and maintained her dignity even when others questioned her worth. Through it all, Maria held onto hope. She believed that her life could change, that someone would one day see the real her, the heart, mind, and soul that had been ignored for so long. Each night, before going to sleep on the hard floor of her small room, she would imagine a life where she mattered for who she was. She dreamed of walking through fields freely, making her own choices, and living a life filled with respect and love. Though her family and village could not see her beauty, Maria understood that her true value lay in her strength, kindness, and intelligence. And deep inside, she knew that these qualities, though invisible to many, would one day be noticed by the person who mattered most. That hope became her quiet rebellion, her silent promise to herself that her life would not be defined by others' shallow judgments. Maria's life had always been filled with quiet struggles, but nothing prepared her for the moment her family began to speak openly about selling her to a wealthy suitor. It was a strange and painful term, but in her parents' minds, it was simply practical. They were desperate. The crops had failed that season, debts were mounting, and her younger siblings needed food, school supplies, and clothing. To them, Maria's future was less about love or happiness and more about survival. The idea was first suggested one evening after dinner. Maria's father, weary and tense, sat at the wooden table with a serious expression. "We have to think about your future, Maria," he said, his voice heavy with worry. You know we cannot provide everything for the family. We must find someone who can help." Her mother, sitting beside him, nodded, her hands twisting the cloth on her lap. "Yes, we have tried waiting, but time is not on our side. You are grown now, and we cannot let another year pass. We have to consider men who can secure the family's future." Maria's heart sank. She had expected her parents to encourage patience, perhaps even help her seek a life beyond the village, but instead, she heard words that made her feel like a commodity. She understood their intentions. They were not cruel, but the pain of knowing she was being valued mainly for what she could bring to them was almost unbearable. She remained silent, refusing to let tears fall in front of them. Over the next few weeks, the discussions became more direct. Relatives from neighboring villages arrived, offering their sons as potential suitors. Each time Maria met a man, she tried to be polite, smiling as they complimented her manners or intelligence. But she could feel the subtle judgment in their eyes, the quiet disappointment when they realized her plain appearance did not meet their expectations. She watched as her parents' faces fell each time another offer failed, their hopes pinned on her ability to secure their future. The idea of being sold became a heavy cloud over Maria's life. She tried to stay busy with household chores, school lessons, and helping the neighbors, but the knowledge that her life might be decided by money and appearance weighed heavily on her. At night, she lay on her thin mattress, staring at the ceiling, imagining a different life. One where she could make choices for herself, live freely, and be appreciated for who she truly was. But the reality of her situation pressed down like a stone in her chest. As the meetings continued, Maria noticed a pattern. Many of the men and their families focused on her looks, dismissing her intelligence and kindness. One man laughed quietly with his brother after meeting her, whispering that she was too plain to attract anyone of wealth. Another family, after a polite introduction, openly commented that she might be acceptable if she learned to dress and style herself differently. Maria's parents tried to hide their embarrassment, but she could see the frustration in their eyes. It was a constant reminder that her true worth, her heart, her skills, her character, was invisible to most. Yet, amidst the rejection and disappointment, a glimmer of hope appeared. One day, a wealthy rancher named Mr. Clayton arrived in the village. He was tall and well-dressed, but not flashy. There was a quiet strength about him, a calm confidence that immediately set him apart from the other suitors Maria had encountered. He came not because he had heard about Maria's appearance, but because someone in the village had mentioned a young woman who was hardworking, intelligent, and kind-hearted. The meeting was brief but remarkable. Maria approached him with her usual politeness, uncertain of what to expect. Mr. Clayton observed her quietly, his eyes scanning her face, but not in judgment. Instead, there was curiosity and a warmth that made Maria feel unexpectedly comfortable. Unlike others, he did not whisper about her looks or make notes about her plainness. He asked questions about her interests, her daily life, and her dreams. Maria answered with honesty, her voice calm but steady, describing her love for animals, her work in the garden, and the books she cherished. Her parents watched in disbelief as Mr. Clayton listened intently, nodding and smiling at her responses. He asked her questions that revealed he valued her mind and heart, not her appearance. Maria could feel a strange hope stirring within her, a feeling she had not experienced during the many months of rejection. Perhaps, she thought quietly, there could be someone in the world who would see her for who she truly was. Within a few days, Mr. Clayton made an offer. Unlike the others, he was willing to provide financial support to her family and bring Maria to live on his ranch. His proposal was generous, far beyond what anyone else had offered. But more importantly, it came without any conditions about her looks or appearance. He wanted her for who she was, not for the way she appeared. Maria's parents, though initially focused on the money, could see the difference in his demeanor. He treated Maria with respect and seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts and feelings. Maria, however, had mixed emotions. She was relieved that her family would have financial security, but the idea of leaving everything she knew, the village, her friends, the hills where she had spent her childhood, was frightening. And yet, deep down, she felt a sense of curiosity and hope. Perhaps life on the ranch could be different, a life where her intelligence, kindness, and work ethic mattered. Perhaps, for the first time, she could live for herself. Before the decision was finalized, Maria spent quiet evenings walking through the fields, reflecting on her life. She remembered the many times she had felt invisible, the whispered judgments of the villagers, and the painful comments from her own family. She also remembered the small acts of kindness she had performed, helping neighbors, caring for animals, teaching children to read, and the satisfaction those moments brought her. She realized that these things, which had always seemed small, were the very qualities that made her valuable, even if the world had often failed to notice. When the day came for her to leave the village, Maria felt a mixture of fear, sadness, and anticipation. Her family helped her pack her few belongings, and neighbors came to offer quiet blessings. She said goodbye to Sophia, her best friend, who hugged her tightly and whispered, "You will see, Maria. They cannot see your face, but they will see your heart." Maria clutched her friend's hand and smiled, feeling the warmth of hope for the first time in many months. On the journey to the ranch, Maria observed the changing landscape, noticing the wide-open plains, the rolling hills, and the distant mountains. She felt a sense of freedom she had never experienced in her village. Though her heart ached for home, she also felt a growing excitement for what lay ahead. Mr. Clayton, who accompanied her on the journey, spoke little, but his presence was reassuring. He treated her with courtesy and respect, never patronizing her or treating her as if she were simply property. Upon arriving at the ranch, Maria was struck by its vastness and beauty. The land stretched as far as the eye could see, dotted with grazing animals, wooden barns, and flowing streams. For a moment, she felt overwhelmed by the scale of it all. But Mr. Clayton encouraged her gently, showing her the routines of ranch life and explaining her potential role. He asked for her input on daily tasks and decisions, and for the first time, Maria felt that her opinions mattered. The first weeks on the ranch were not easy. Maria faced new responsibilities and challenges, from caring for animals to understanding the management of the land. Some of the ranch workers were skeptical of her presence, whispering among themselves about the plain girl who had arrived from the village. But Maria remained patient and determined. She worked quietly, learning quickly, earning the respect of those who initially doubted her abilities. During this time, Maria and Mr. Clayton began to develop a quiet understanding. He recognized her intelligence, her patience, and her ability to see solutions where others saw problems. He began to confide in her, asking for her advice on managing the ranch and handling the workers. Maria, in turn, felt a growing sense of trust and respect for him. Unlike the many men her family had introduced her to, he seemed genuinely interested in who she was, not what she looked like or what she could provide financially. Slowly, the rumors and judgments from her village faded from Maria's mind. She began to see that her life could be defined by her choices and abilities rather than her appearance. The fear and pain of being sold were replaced by the quiet hope that perhaps her future could be different, a life where she mattered for her heart and mind. She realized that sometimes the world's harsh judgments were not a reflection of one's value, but of the narrow vision of those around them. By the end of her first year on the ranch, Maria had adapted to her new life. She had gained confidence, learned new skills, and started to feel a sense of belonging. She still missed her village and the simple life she had known, but she also felt proud of her achievements and the respect she had earned. Most importantly, she began to understand that her true worth had never depended on appearance. It had always been in her character, her intelligence, and her kindness. Maria's story on the ranch was just beginning, but the first part of her journey had already taught her important lessons. She learned that life could be unfair, that people could judge quickly, and that family pressures could be heavy. But she also discovered that strength, patience, and integrity could change the course of her life. And somewhere deep in her heart, she held on to the quiet hope that this new chapter would bring recognition, opportunity, and perhaps, in time, the happiness she had always dreamed of. Life on the ranch was nothing like Maria had ever known. The vast open field stretched endlessly, the sun rising and setting over hills she had only dreamed about. The air smelled of fresh grass, earth, and the faint scent of horses and cattle. It was beautiful, but it was also demanding. Each day brought new tasks and challenges that tested her patience, endurance, and courage. Maria realized quickly that life on the ranch would require more than good intentions. It required determination, intelligence, and a willingness to learn. The first morning, she woke before dawn. The rooster's crow echoed across the fields, and the chill in the air reminded her that she was far from the cozy, familiar rooms of her village home. Mr. Clayton handed her a list of chores. She was to help feed the animals, clean the stables, and assist the ranch hands in preparing for the day's work. Maria had worked on a farm before, but never on this scale. At first, she struggled with the unfamiliar routines. Buckets of water were heavier than she expected, and the animals were larger and more unpredictable than the ones she had tended in her village. Horses neighed and stamped their hooves, impatient for her attention, and the cows looked at her with curious, watchful eyes. Despite the challenges, Maria approached each task with determination. She worked carefully, observing the ranch hands and learning from their techniques. She asked questions when necessary, but she did so respectfully, never wanting to seem inexperienced or incompetent. Her intelligence quickly became apparent. She remembered instructions, noticed patterns in the animal's behavior, and even suggested minor improvements that helped the daily routines run more smoothly. Some of the ranch workers, initially skeptical of the plain village girl, began to respect her dedication and ability to learn quickly. Mr. Clayton watched her progress quietly. He did not intervene unnecessarily but offered guidance when he noticed she struggled or needed advice. His patience and calm demeanor reassured Maria. Unlike the men who had judged her in the past, he never focused on her appearance. He noticed her mind, her character, and her ability to handle responsibility. Maria began to feel a quiet sense of pride and hope that she had rarely experienced. For the first time, she realized that her worth might not be measured by looks, but by skill, perseverance, and heart. Over the next few weeks, Maria learned more than just daily chores. She discovered how to manage the ranch's accounts, keep track of inventory, and plan for future needs. She spent time studying the land, learning the best ways to rotate crops and care for the animals. Each day brought new challenges, and with each challenge, her confidence grew. She began to feel that she belonged, that she could contribute meaningfully, and that her life had value beyond what her family had ever told her. The social dynamics of the ranch were more complex than Maria expected. Some of the workers were friendly and helpful, while others were suspicious of her presence. They whispered about her plainness and doubted her ability to handle the work. Maria noticed these murmurs but refused to let them discourage her. She worked diligently, proving herself through action rather than words. Slowly, respect replaced doubt. The workers began to ask her opinion on small decisions, and even those who had mocked her in the beginning came to acknowledge her competence. As Maria's confidence grew, so did her relationship with Mr. Clayton. They spent long hours together managing the ranch, discussing strategies and solving problems. He began to trust her judgment, often seeking her advice on matters that required careful thought and insight. Maria, in turn, respected him not just as a wealthy rancher, but as a man who valued integrity, intelligence, and hard work. She realized that he had a rare ability to see beyond appearances, to appreciate the person rather than the surface. This recognition gave her a sense of self-worth she had never experienced before. The work was not always easy. There were moments when Maria felt overwhelmed by the physical demands of the ranch. Some days were blisteringly hot, and others were cold and wet. Injuries, accidents, and unexpected challenges tested her endurance. One afternoon, a young horse spooked and ran toward the fence. Maria acted quickly, calming the animal and preventing it from hurting itself. Her quick thinking impressed the ranch hands and Mr. Clayton alike. Each small success reinforced her belief in her abilities and reminded her that determination and courage mattered more than beauty or social approval. Maria also discovered the quiet joys of ranch life. She loved riding the horses across the open fields, feeling the wind against her face and the freedom beneath her. She found peace in the early mornings, watching the sunrise over the hills and listening to the sounds of nature. These moments gave her a sense of balance and reminded her why she had worked so hard to maintain hope. She began to understand that life's value was not always measured by comfort or admiration, but by the satisfaction of doing one's best and finding purpose in everyday tasks. Despite her growing confidence, Maria sometimes struggled with feelings of isolation. The ranch was vast, and while she was respected, she occasionally felt lonely in the quiet expanses of land. The memories of her village, her family, and the life she had left behind surfaced in these moments. She missed Sophia, her childhood friend, and the simple joys of her old home. Yet even in her loneliness, she reminded herself that she was building a new life, one where her intelligence, character, and kindness could finally be appreciated. Over time, Maria became an integral part of the ranch's operation. She learned how to manage the workers, plan for seasonal changes, and make decisions that affected the entire estate. Her suggestions were increasingly valued, and her confidence in her abilities grew daily. She began to see that her life was no longer dictated by appearances or the opinions of others. Instead, it was shaped by her own choices, her work ethic, and her determination to succeed. The relationship between Maria and Mr. Clayton deepened gradually. He admired her intelligence, her resilience, and the quiet strength she displayed in handling the challenges of ranch life. They began to share ideas about expanding the ranch, improving productivity, and helping the community. Maria appreciated his guidance, but also realized that he treated her as an equal, respecting her opinions and valuing her input. This mutual respect created a bond built on understanding rather than superficial attraction. One significant moment came when Maria noticed that the barn's storage system was inefficient, causing delays in feeding the animals. She suggested a reorganization plan, which Mr. Clayton accepted. The implementation went smoothly, and the workers praised her initiative. This success boosted her confidence further, and she realized that her contributions were making a real difference. For the first time, Maria felt a deep sense of belonging and accomplishment, knowing that her skills and ideas were respected. Maria also began to form friendships with some of the workers. She discovered that they appreciated her kindness and fairness, her willingness to listen, and her ability to remain calm under pressure. These relationships taught her that trust and respect were earned through actions and consistency, not appearances. She felt proud to be recognized for qualities that truly mattered, rather than being judged by shallow standards. Despite her growing success and respect, Maria never forgot her family or the hardships she had endured. She often thought about her parents, hoping they would come to understand the value of her character beyond her appearance. She also remembered the lessons she had learned in her village, the importance of kindness, patience, and perseverance. These values guided her every decision on the ranch, shaping her into a leader who was respected not just for skill, but for integrity. The villagers, who once whispered about her plainness, began to hear stories of her accomplishments on the ranch. Word spread about her intelligence, her courage, and her ability to manage a large operation. Slowly, the opinions of those who had dismissed her began to change. Though Maria did not seek recognition, she felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that her true worth was finally becoming visible to those who had once doubted her. Through it all, Maria maintained her humility and kindness. She helped new workers learn the routines, cared for animals with patience, and never let success make her arrogant. Her character became her true beauty, shining more brightly than any physical appearance could. People who worked with her admired her, respected her, and often sought her guidance. She had transformed from a plain village girl into a strong, capable woman whose value could not be measured by looks alone. By the end of her 3rd year on the ranch, Maria had become a respected and trusted member of the community. She had proven that hard work, intelligence, and kindness mattered more than appearance. Her life was no longer dictated by others, judgments, or societal pressures. She had found a place where she belonged, where her contributions mattered, and where she was appreciated for who she truly was. Maria often reflected on her journey, thinking about the girl she had been in the village, quiet, overlooked, and undervalued. She realized that all the struggles, the pain, and the loneliness had shaped her into the strong, capable woman she had become. Her story was no longer about being too plain or being judged for appearances. It was about resilience, courage, and the power of inner strength. And though her journey was far from over, she knew that she was finally living a life that was her own, one defined by her heart, her mind, and her actions rather than by shallow standards. Maria had spent several years on the ranch, learning, growing, and proving her worth. She had faced challenges, doubts from others, and her own fears, but through it all, she had become a strong and capable woman. Life had begun to feel steadier, and yet she understood that the hardest battles were sometimes the ones against prejudice, misunderstanding, and the lingering judgments of the world around her. Despite the respect she had earned from the ranch workers and Mr. Clayton, some people in the surrounding villages still whispered about her. They remembered the plain girl who had been sold off by her family, and many assumed that she would remain insignificant. Maria could not control the gossip, nor did she care to. What mattered most was the work she did, the respect she earned, and the life she was building. Even so, she felt a quiet determination to show, not just to others but to herself, that her value had always been more than skin deep. One of the first challenges came when a neighboring ranch faced financial difficulty. Their cattle were sick, crops had failed, and the owner had no idea how to manage the crisis. Word reached Mr. Clayton, who believed in helping the community when possible. Maria volunteered to help with the situation, offering suggestions on how to organize the farm, treat the sick animals, and repair the failing irrigation system. Her knowledge, patience, and practical skills impressed not only Mr. Clayton but also the neighboring rancher, who had previously dismissed her as just a village girl. The success of that project spread quickly. People began talking about Maria not as the plain girl from the village, but as a smart, capable, and kind woman who could solve problems and lead effectively. She was invited to help with other projects, from organizing crop rotations to advising on livestock care. Each success reinforced her confidence and helped the community see her true worth. She began to understand that respect was earned not by appearance, but by skill, patience, and integrity. While she gained recognition in the surrounding communities, Maria also faced moments of jealousy and criticism. Some ranch workers and neighbors were wary of her growing influence. They had long been used to a world where power and respect came from wealth or appearance, and Maria's quiet strength challenged that system. Some whispered behind her back, spreading doubts about her abilities or questioning why Mr. Clayton seemed to value her opinion more than theirs. Maria handled these moments with grace. She knew that anger or retaliation would only make things worse. Instead, she focused on her work, on helping others, and on remaining consistent in her actions. Over time, even those who had doubted her began to acknowledge her dedication and competence. Her calm, patient, and determined approach turned skeptics into allies. People started to understand that her value was not defined by how she looked, but by her character, intelligence, and kindness. Her growing reputation also brought a subtle change in Mr. Clayton. While he had always respected her intelligence and character, he now openly relied on her judgment in important decisions. Maria helped plan the ranch's expansion, introduced improvements in animal care, and suggested methods to increase crop yield. She learned how to negotiate with buyers, organize supplies, and manage finances. With each success, she felt a deep sense of pride, knowing that she was capable of managing responsibilities far beyond what anyone had expected of her. The bond between Maria and Mr. Clayton continued to grow, built on mutual trust and respect. He admired her ability to face challenges calmly and intelligently, her dedication to others, and the kindness she showed even in difficult situations. Maria, in turn, appreciated his fairness, patience, and willingness to see her for who she truly was. She realized that he had never been interested in her looks, but in her heart, her mind, and her courage. This understanding brought her a sense of security and confidence she had never experienced in her life. One day, an unexpected event tested Maria's skills and resilience. A severe storm swept through the ranch, flooding parts of the fields and causing damage to fences and barns. Livestock were at risk and the workers panicked. Maria quickly organized the workers, dividing tasks and prioritizing actions. She comforted frightened animals, guided them to safety, and coordinated the repairs needed to secure the property. Her calm leadership and quick thinking prevented serious loss and impressed everyone, including Mr. Clayton. After the storm passed, the workers gathered around Maria, praising her for her leadership and bravery. Even those who had been skeptical of her abilities acknowledged that she had saved the ranch from potential disaster. Maria felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She realized that her life was no longer dictated by the judgments of others. She had proven, not only to herself but to the world around her, that her value was far greater than anyone had imagined. The villagers who had once laughed at her plainness now viewed her differently. Word of her achievements reached back to her home village. Her family, who had once treated her as a commodity, began to see her in a new light. They were proud, though perhaps a little late in recognizing her true worth. Maria, however, did not seek approval or validation. She had found confidence and fulfillment in her own actions and in the respect of those who truly mattered. As her responsibilities and reputation grew, Maria also discovered her own voice in the community. She began mentoring younger women, teaching them skills in agriculture, animal care, and basic management. She encouraged them to value themselves for their abilities and character rather than appearances. Her influence spread quietly but powerfully, inspiring others to recognize that strength, courage, and intelligence mattered more than society's narrow standards of beauty. Maria's life became a balance of hard work, responsibility, and small joys. She loved riding across the open fields, watching sunsets over the distant hills, and spending quiet evenings in reflection. She celebrated the achievements of the ranch, helped workers in need, and continued learning new skills. Through all of this, she never lost her humility. She treated everyone with kindness, fairness, and respect, which only enhanced the admiration people felt for her. Amid her growing success, Maria also felt a quiet happiness with Mr. Clayton. Their relationship was not based on superficial attraction, but on shared respect, understanding, and trust. They spent long hours discussing the ranch, solving problems together and supporting one another. Maria admired him for his wisdom, fairness, and ability to see beyond appearances. In return, Mr. Clayton valued Maria's insights, her judgment, and her unwavering courage. Their connection was deep, built on the foundation of mutual respect rather than societal expectations. Through these years, Maria also reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She remembered the pain of being dismissed for her plainness, the fear and sadness of leaving her village, and the uncertainty she had felt at every step. Yet she also acknowledged the lessons learned: resilience, patience, and the understanding that true value comes from within. She realized that the struggles she had faced had shaped her into a woman of strength, intelligence, and kindness. By the end of this chapter in her life, Maria had become more than just a capable worker on a ranch. She had become a leader, a mentor, and a respected figure in the community. Her story was no longer about being undervalued or dismissed for appearances. It was about proving that perseverance, intelligence, and a kind heart could change one's life and the lives of those around them. She had also learned to forgive the past. Her family had made mistakes, and society had judged her unfairly, but Maria had chosen not to let bitterness guide her. Instead, she focused on building a life of integrity, respect, and meaningful work. Her past, with all its struggles, became a source of strength and motivation rather than a burden. Maria's journey through prejudice, judgment, and doubt had taught her an invaluable lesson. The world might not always recognize your worth at first, but dedication, courage, and character will eventually shine through. She had learned to trust herself, to value her own abilities, and to lead with patience and integrity. This growth gave her a sense of fulfillment and joy that went beyond wealth, status, or beauty. The ranch continued to thrive under her care, and Maria continued to grow as a person. She faced new challenges, but each obstacle reinforced her strength and determination. She had proven to herself and to the world that her life could be meaningful, successful, and fulfilling, not because of her looks, but because of the qualities she carried within her. As the sun set over the rolling hills, Maria stood by the fence, looking out over the fields she had helped manage and protect. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that she had overcome prejudice, proven her abilities, and found a place where she belonged. Her journey was far from over, but she now understood that true success came from the heart, mind, and courage to face life's challenges. And in that understanding, Maria found peace, purpose, and the quiet joy of being truly seen for who she was. Over the years, Maria had grown from a timid, overlooked girl into a strong, confident woman. The ranch, once a place of uncertainty, had become a home, a place where her skills, heart, and intelligence were truly valued. She had proven herself through hard work, patience, and determination, and now her reputation had spread far beyond the ranch. People in nearby towns spoke of her wisdom, courage, and fairness, and she had become an inspiration for women and young girls who faced similar struggles in their own lives. Despite all her accomplishments, Maria remained humble. She never boasted about her achievements or sought recognition for herself. Her satisfaction came from knowing that she had earned respect through her actions, her dedication, and her kindness. She continued to manage the ranch with care, helping the workers, planning improvements, and ensuring that the animals and land were well looked after. Every decision she made reflected her thoughtful nature, and over time, people began to see her as a true leader, one who inspired loyalty and admiration. Her family, who had once judged her harshly and even treated her as a commodity, began to notice the changes in her life. News of her accomplishments reached her village, and her parents felt a mix of pride and regret. They saw that their daughter, whom they had once considered too plain, had become a woman of great strength, intelligence, and influence. Maria, however, held no bitterness toward them. She understood that they had acted out of fear and necessity, not malice. Instead of dwelling on the past, she chose to forgive and focus on the life she had built. Maria's influence extended beyond the ranch. She began mentoring young women in the surrounding communities, teaching them skills in farming, animal care, and basic management. She encouraged them to value themselves for their abilities and character rather than appearances. Her story became a symbol of resilience and determination, a reminder that even those overlooked by society could rise above prejudice and create meaningful lives. Many young women sought her advice, inspired by her example, and she gladly shared her knowledge, knowing that her experiences could empower others. One significant turning point came when the ranch faced a large, unexpected challenge. A series of droughts threatened the crops and disease affected part of the livestock. Many people doubted that the ranch could survive, and panic spread among the workers. Maria, however, remained calm. She assessed the situation carefully, prioritized the most urgent tasks, and organized a plan of action. She coordinated irrigation efforts, implemented new feeding techniques for the livestock, and worked alongside the workers to repair fences and protect the crops. Her leadership, intelligence, and courage turned a potentially disastrous situation into a manageable one. Mr. Clayton, who had always trusted and respected her judgment, watched in quiet admiration as Maria guided the workers through the crisis. He recognized not only her practical skills, but also her ability to inspire confidence in others. Through her calm demeanor and decisive actions, she had earned the loyalty and trust of everyone on the ranch. It was clear to him, and to all who witnessed it, that Maria was not only capable of managing the ranch but could also lead it into a prosperous future. As the seasons passed, Maria continued to thrive. The ranch became more successful under her guidance, and the community began to rely on her expertise. She introduced sustainable practices that improved productivity, cared for the animals with compassion, and implemented systems that made the ranch more efficient. People came from nearby areas seeking her advice, and her reputation as a wise and capable woman grew steadily. She had become a living example of how strength, intelligence, and kindness could transform a life, even in the face of prejudice and doubt. Despite her growing success, Maria never lost her gentle nature. She treated everyone with respect, whether they were wealthy landowners, struggling farmers, or new workers learning the routines of the ranch. She listened patiently, offered guidance, and never judged anyone for their mistakes or weaknesses. Her fairness and compassion made her not just respected but loved by those around her. People knew that she would stand by them, support them, and guide them wisely, and this trust created a sense of unity and harmony on the ranch that few had ever experienced. Her relationship with Mr. Clayton also deepened over the years. While many assumed that their bond was romantic because of their close partnership, it was built first and foremost on mutual respect, trust, and admiration. They had come to rely on each other's judgment and support, and their connection grew stronger through shared experiences and challenges. Mr. Clayton valued Maria not for appearances, but for her character, intelligence, and heart. Maria, in turn, appreciated his fairness, patience, and understanding. Together, they created a partnership that was rare and inspiring, based on equality rather than superficial expectations. One day, a visitor from a distant town arrived, seeking guidance on managing a struggling farm. The visitor had heard of Maria's reputation and wanted to learn from her experience. Maria welcomed the visitor, sharing her knowledge freely, teaching practical skills, and offering advice on managing both people and resources. As she spoke, she realized how far she had come from the young girl who had been dismissed for being too plain. She had grown into a woman whose abilities, courage, and kindness were valued far and wide, and the thought filled her with quiet pride. The visitor left inspired, and word of Maria's expertise spread even further. Letters arrived from other towns seeking her advice, and she was invited to speak at local gatherings about her experiences. Maria embraced these opportunities not for fame, but to help others understand that perseverance, intelligence, and compassion could overcome prejudice and challenges. She had become a mentor, a leader, and a symbol of hope for those who faced obstacles similar to the ones she had endured. Through it all, Maria never forgot the lessons of her youth. She remembered the loneliness, the judgment, and the feeling of being overlooked. She remembered the moments of doubt and fear, and the times when she had questioned her own worth. Those experiences, though painful, had shaped her into the woman she had become. They had taught her empathy, patience, and resilience. They had shown her the importance of inner strength and character, and she carried those lessons into every decision she made and every action she took. Her family, who had once sold her for being too plain, eventually came to visit the ranch. They were astonished at the life Maria had built, the respect she had earned, and the prosperity she had helped create. They realized that their judgments had been shallow, and that true worth was measured not by appearance, but by intelligence, courage, and character. Maria welcomed them warmly, but she also made it clear that she had built her life on her own terms. She had forgiven them, but she had also grown beyond their narrow expectations. Maria's journey also brought her personal fulfillment. She had found joy in her work, satisfaction in her achievements, and a deep sense of self-worth. She had created a life where she mattered, not because of looks or status, but because of her abilities, her heart, and her determination. She had built a community of respect and trust around her, inspiring others to recognize that true value comes from within. And through it all, she remained humble, kind, and compassionate, never losing sight of the values that had guided her from the beginning. As the sun set over the ranch, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, Maria stood by the fence, looking out over the fields she had helped manage and protect. She thought about her journey, the struggles, the hardships, and the moments of doubt. She remembered the whispers of the village, the judgment of her family, and the fear she had felt leaving her home. And yet she also remembered the hope that had never left her, the courage that had driven her forward, and the strength that had carried her through each challenge. Maria smiled quietly, feeling a deep sense of peace. She had proven to herself and the world that appearances were not the measure of a person's worth. She had shown that intelligence, kindness, courage, and integrity mattered more than beauty, wealth, or social standing. She had built a life of purpose, respect, and fulfillment, and she had helped others find their own strength along the way. Looking to the future, Maria felt excitement rather than fear. She knew that challenges would come, as they always did, but she also knew that she had the strength, wisdom, and heart to face them. She had learned that life's value is not measured by what others see on the surface, but by the qualities one carries within. And in that understanding, she found freedom, confidence, and true happiness. Her story had come full circle. The girl who had been dismissed for being too plain had become a woman of remarkable strength and character, respected, admired, and loved for who she truly was. She had transformed the ranch, inspired her community, and built a life on her own terms. Maria had not only survived the judgment and prejudice of others, she had thrived, proving that true worth is always found within. And as she walked across the field she had helped nurture, Maria felt a quiet joy that no words could capture. She was no longer defined by others, opinions, or society's narrow standards. She was defined by her actions, her heart, and her courage. And in that, she had found everything she had ever hoped for: purpose, respect, and the knowledge that she had created a life truly worth living.